The morning bells of Sunspire Academy rang across the crystal towers, their sound carrying through the thin atmosphere of the station. Jake Chen stood in the observation deck, watching three suns rise over the horizon of the gas giant below. He had been at the academy for 6 months now, the only human among 2,000 students from 47 different species. His reflection in the transparent steel showed a young man who looked tired, his dark hair uncombed, his academy uniform wrinkled from another restless night. Behind him, the door hissed open. Vrex, his Kaltorian roommate, entered on 6 legs, his chitinous body clicking against the floor. The insect-like alien carried a data pad in his forward manipulators. "You missed the announcement," Vrex said, his translator converting the clicks and buzzes into standard common. "The trials begin today." Jake turned from the window. "What trials?" "The endurance trials. They happen every cycle. Students who fail are sent home." Vrex's compound eyes reflected the light from the suns. "I thought you knew. Your species was sent the same briefing as everyone else." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had received thousands of documents when he arrived at Sunspire, most of them in formats his tablet struggled to translate properly. He must have missed this one. "What do we have to do?" "Survive," Vrex said simply. "The Academy believes in practical education. Use your abilities or lose your place here. That is the way of Sunspire." The briefing hall was packed with students of every shape and size. Jake squeezed between a methane-breathing Kixlar in their containment suit and a towering Bronthan whose head scraped the ceiling. On the central platform, Headmaster Xyloth stood, her 4 arms folded across her chest. The Zethian leader of Sunspire Academy was known throughout the galaxy as one of the finest educators and one of the most demanding. "Students," she began, her voice amplified across the hall, "you have spent months learning theory. Now you will prove you deserve to be here. The endurance trials will test everything you have learned. You will be divided into teams and sent to different environments. You will have no outside help. You will use your natural abilities and your training to survive for 10 standard days." A hologram appeared above her head, showing various hostile environments: a frozen moon, an acidic swamp world, a desert planet with surface temperatures hot enough to melt lead, and a jungle moon with crushing gravity. Jake studied each one, his heart pounding. Humans were adaptable, but they were not specialized. Every other species here had evolved for specific extreme conditions. "Teams will be announced momentarily," Xyloth continued. "You cannot choose your teammates. You cannot refuse assignment. If you fail, you return home, and your species will be notified that you could not meet Sunspire's standards." Questions? Silence filled the hall. No one dared speak. "Good," Xyloth said. "Team assignments are now active on your devices." Jake pulled out his tablet, his hands shaking slightly. The screen flickered and showed his assignment. Team 17. Environment: Frost Home Station on Glacier 4. Temperature range: -100 to -150 degrees Celsius. Team members: Jake Chen, human; Kessa, Thermian; Rolk, Morvian, thin atmosphere specialists. His heart sank further. Thermians were beings of living energy who could regulate their temperature. Morvians were massive, fur-covered creatures built for cold. Humans could survive cold, but not those temperatures, not without heavy equipment. Beside him, a melodious voice spoke. "You are on my team, human." Jake looked up at Kessa, the Thermian. She appeared as a vaguely humanoid shape of contained blue flame, visible through her transparent containment suit. "This is fortunate for me, less fortunate for you." "Why do you say that?" Jake asked. "Because you will die quickly, and Rolk and I will not have to share resources," Kessa said matter-of-factly. "No offense intended. It is simply probability." The transport ship dropped them on the surface of Glacier 4 3 hours later. Jake stepped out of the heated cabin into a world of white and blue. The wind hit him like a physical force, and even through his Academy-issued thermal suit, he could feel the cold seeping in. The sky was a pale purple, and the sun was a distant point of light that provided almost no warmth. Rolk emerged next, his 9-foot frame covered in thick white fur. He barely seemed to notice the cold. "The beacon is that direction," he rumbled, pointing with a massive arm. 17 kilometers. We walk." Kessa floated out last, her energy body bright against the snow. "I detect no immediate threats. We should move quickly. The human will slow us down." "I'll keep up," Jake said, his teeth already chattering despite the suit's heating elements. He adjusted his pack and started walking. The snow crunched under his boots, and the wind howled across the frozen landscape. For the first hour, Jake did keep up. He focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on keeping his breathing steady, on ignoring the cold that was starting to penetrate his suit. But by the second hour, he was falling behind. His fingers were numb. His toes were numb. His face felt like it was made of ice. Rolk and Kessa stopped at the top of a ridge and waited for him. When Jake finally caught up, gasping, Kessa spoke. "You are slowing us. At this rate, it will take 3 days to reach the beacon. We will fail because of you." "I'm doing my best," Jake said through chattering teeth. "Your best is inadequate," Kessa replied. "I suggest you return to the drop point and signal for emergency extraction. Rolk and I will complete the trial without you." Jake looked at Rolk. The massive alien shrugged. "She is correct. You are not built for this environment. There is no shame in acknowledging your limitations." Jake looked at the endless expanse of ice ahead of them. He thought about returning home, about being the first human to wash out of Sunspire. He thought about the billions of people on Earth who were watching, who had hopes riding on his success. Humans had only been admitted to the Academy 5 years ago, and the acceptance rate was brutal. Only 10 humans had ever attended. 3 had already failed out. "No," Jake said. "I'm not quitting." "Then you are foolish," Kessa said. She turned and continued walking, her energy form leaving no footprints in the snow. Rolk followed, and Jake trudged after them, his legs feeling like lead. By nightfall, they had covered only 8 kilometers. Jake was hypothermic despite his suit. His movements were sluggish, and his thoughts were becoming fuzzy. Rolk dug a snow cave with his massive claws, while Kessa provided light. Jake collapsed inside, shivering uncontrollably. "He will not survive the night," Kessa observed. "His core temperature is dropping." "Probably not," Rolk agreed. He settled into the corner, his bulk taking up half the cave. "But humans are strange. I studied them before the mission. They have a trait their scientists call stubbornness. It is not logical, but it is powerful." Jake wanted to respond, but his jaw was locked from the cold. He curled into a ball, trying to preserve what little body heat remained. His suit's heating element was at maximum, but it was designed for short-term exposure, not days in these conditions. He was going to die out here. But humans did not evolve in one environment. They evolved to adapt to many environments. Jake's distant ancestors had survived ice ages with nothing but animal skins and fire. They had crossed frozen land bridges. They had endured. That trait was in his DNA, coded into every cell. His body would fight to survive because that was what human bodies did. He did not remember falling asleep, but when he woke, gray light was filtering into the cave. His shivering had stopped, which he knew was a bad sign. He tried to move and found he could barely lift his arms. Kessa and Rolk were already awake, preparing to leave. "The human still lives," Rolk said, surprised. "Remarkable." "He will not make it far today," Kessa said. "We should proceed without him." Jake forced himself to sit up. Every movement was agony. His muscles screamed. His skin felt like it was cracking. But he moved. "I'm coming," he whispered. They left the cave and continued across the glacier. Jake's steps were mechanical now, his mind distant from his body. He had entered a state he had read about but never experienced, the point where the body continues purely on determination, where conscious thought becomes secondary to the single imperative to move forward. One step, another, another. The sun climbed higher in the purple sky, though it provided no warmth. The wind picked up, carrying ice crystals that stung exposed skin. Jake kept walking. He fell twice, and each time he forced himself back to his feet. Kessa and Rolk no longer waited for him. They moved ahead, and he followed their tracks. By midday, Jake realized something strange. He was not getting colder. In fact, he felt slightly warmer. His shivering had returned, which meant his body was still fighting. He checked his suit's readout and saw that his core temperature had stabilized. It was still dangerously low by human standards, but it was not dropping. His body was adapting. His metabolism had shifted into overdrive, burning calories to produce heat. His blood vessels had constricted in his extremities to preserve core warmth. His muscles were generating heat through constant micro-movements. It was not enough to make him comfortable, but it was enough to keep him alive. Humans were not built for extreme cold, but they could endure it. They could adapt. Jake picked up his pace slightly. The tracks ahead of him were fresher now. He was catching up to Kessa and Rolk. His mind cleared a bit as his body found a rhythm. This was what humans did. They endured. They persisted. They adapted to environments that should kill them and found ways to survive. As the third day dawned on Glacier 4, Jake Chen was still walking. His Thermian and Morvian teammates were no longer certain he would be the first to fall. In fact, they were beginning to wonder if the human might be more dangerous than they had believed. Not because of strength or speed or natural armor, but because of something far more unsettling. He would not stop. No matter the cost, no matter the pain, the human kept moving forward. And in the galaxy's most elite academy, that kind of determination was worth more than any natural advantage. The beacon appeared on the horizon at noon on the fourth day. It was a small structure, barely visible against the white landscape, but it represented salvation. Inside would be supplies, shelter, and equipment for the remainder of the trial. Jake could see it clearly now, perhaps 5 kilometers distant. His vision had been getting sharper over the past day, his eyes adjusting to the glare of the ice. Another adaptation. Kessa and Rolk had reached a flat stretch of glacier ahead of him. Jake was only 100 meters behind now, much closer than he had been. His body had settled into a state of constant motion, burning through his rations at an alarming rate, but maintaining its core temperature. He had stopped feeling his fingers and toes 2 days ago, but they still worked when he commanded them. That was enough. Then the ice beneath Kessa cracked. The sound was like a gunshot across the frozen plain. Jake saw the Thermian's energy form flare bright blue as she dropped through the surface. Rolk lunged forward, but his massive weight made the crack spread wider. Within seconds, both of them had disappeared into the dark water below the ice. Jake ran. His body protested, his frozen muscles screaming, but he pushed himself forward. He reached the edge of the hole and looked down. The water was black and churning. He could see Kessa's light flickering beneath the surface, growing dimmer. Rolk's massive form was struggling, his fur soaked, the weight pulling him down. Thermians could not survive in water. Their energy forms would dissipate, and Morvians, despite their size, could not swim with their dense bone structure and heavy fur. They were both drowning. Jake did not hesitate. He stripped off his thermal suit, knowing it would drag him down, and dove into the water wearing only his thin base layer. The cold was absolute. It was like being stabbed with 1,000 knives simultaneously. His lungs seized, his heart stuttered, but he kicked downward, his eyes open in the freezing water. He reached Kessa first. Her containment suit was intact but filling with water. Jake grabbed it and kicked upward, his legs pumping, his lungs burned, his vision darkened at the edges. But he broke the surface and pushed Kessa's suit toward the ice edge, where her energy form could escape the water. She floated up and out, her light dim but stable. Jake dove again. Rolk had sunk deeper, his struggles growing weaker. Jake's body was shutting down. The cold was beyond anything a human should survive. His movements were becoming sluggish. But he reached Rolk and grabbed the fur on the Morvian's back. He pulled, knowing he could not lift the massive creature alone. Rolk was easily 3 times Jake's weight, but Rolk was not dead yet. The Morvian's eyes focused on Jake, and with the last of his strength, he kicked. Together, they rose. Jake's head broke the surface and he gasped, pulling Rolk toward the edge. Kessa, her energy restored, reached out and pulled them both onto solid ice. Jake collapsed, his body convulsing. He could not breathe properly. His heart was beating irregularly. His skin had gone from pale to blue. He was dying, and he knew it. He had maybe minutes before hypothermia killed him. Kessa moved close, and Jake felt warmth. The Thermian had adjusted her containment suit to radiate heat outward. It washed over Jake's frozen body. Rolk, coughing water from his lungs, crawled over and wrapped his massive, wet body around Jake, sharing what little warmth his fur could provide. "Do not die, human," Kessa said, her voice lacking its usual detachment. "You saved us. I will not allow you to die." Jake could not respond. His jaw would not work. But he could feel warmth slowly returning to his body. His heart rate stabilized. His breathing deepened. His human metabolism, pushed beyond all reasonable limits, began to claw its way back from the edge. The same adaptability that had kept him alive in the freezing air now worked to save him from the freezing water. It took an hour before Jake could stand. His body was a mass of pain, and he knew he had done permanent damage. Frostbite on his fingers and toes, muscle damage from the extreme cold. But he was alive. They were all alive. Rolk looked at him with something like awe. "You jumped into the water. You knew it would kill you." "Probably," Jake managed to say through chattering teeth. "But you would have definitely died. Better probably than definitely." "That is not logical," Kessa said, but her voice held something new. Respect, perhaps. "No," Jake agreed, "but humans are not always logical. Sometimes we are just stubborn." They helped him back into his thermal suit, and together they walked the remaining distance to the beacon. Jake leaned on Rolk, his legs barely working, but he stayed upright. He stayed moving. When they entered the beacon station and the door sealed behind them, the warmth of the interior made Jake collapse. He lay on the floor, his body shaking, his mind foggy. Kessa interfaced with the beacon's systems while Rolk tended to Jake, wrapping him in thermal blankets and forcing warm liquid down his throat. "The trial has been updated," Kessa announced. "We have 5 days remaining. The beacon has supplies and medical equipment. Jake requires immediate treatment." "I am fine," Jake lied. Everything hurt, but he forced himself to sit up. "What is next?" Rolk laughed, a deep, rumbling sound. "You nearly died twice, human. You are allowed to rest." "Resting is how you lose," Jake said. "Use it or lose it. That is what Headmaster Xyloth said. If I stop moving, I might not start again." Over the next 5 days, something changed in Team 17. Kessa and Rolk had viewed Jake as a liability, a weak link that would drag them down. But the human had proven something fundamental. What humans lacked in specialized adaptation, they made up for in sheer determination and self-sacrifice. The beacon station had supplies for various tasks they needed to complete: repairing equipment, conducting scientific surveys, establishing communication arrays. Jake worked alongside his teammates, his frostbitten fingers clumsy but persistent. He learned quickly that Thermians had difficulty with fine mechanical work because their energy forms could not manipulate delicate components. Morvians struggled with the same tasks because their massive hands were too large. But humans had nimble fingers and good manual dexterity. "I need you to recalibrate this sensor," Rolk said on the 6th day, handing Jake a piece of equipment. My hands are too large for the adjustment port. Jake took it and began working, his fingers moving despite the pain. What does this sensor do? It monitors seismic activity. The ice shelf is unstable. If we do not maintain these sensors, the Academy will not know when the ice is about to collapse. Future teams would be in danger. Jake nodded and continued working. This was the purpose of the trials, he realized, not just to test survival, but to test whether students could think beyond themselves. Sunspire Academy did not want warriors or scholars alone. It wanted beings who could contribute to something larger. On the 8th day, a massive ice storm struck Glacier 4. The beacon station shook as winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour battered the structure. Ice built up on the exterior, threatening to bury them. The temperature dropped even further, and the station's heating systems struggled to compensate. "We need to clear the ventilation ports," Kessa said, monitoring the systems. "If they freeze over, the station will lose atmosphere recycling. We will suffocate before rescue arrives." "I will go," Rolk said, moving toward the airlock. "No," Jake said. "You are too heavy. The ice shelf around the station is already unstable. Your weight might crack it. I will go." "You will die in this storm," Kessa said flatly. "Maybe," Jake said. "But if we do nothing, we all die. Better maybe than definitely." Before they could stop him, Jake entered the airlock and cycled through. The storm hit him like a solid wall. The wind knocked him off his feet, and ice shards cut through his suit. He could see nothing in the white chaos, but he had memorized the station's layout. The ventilation ports were 3 meters to the left of the airlock, then 4 meters forward. He crawled on hands and knees, the wind trying to tear him away. Ice formed on his suit immediately. His heated visor began to freeze over. He felt for the station's wall and followed it, counting the distance. 3 meters, 4 meters. His hands found the first ventilation port, clogged with ice. Jake pulled a heating tool from his belt and began melting the ice. His hands were so cold he could barely hold the tool. The wind threatened to rip it away. But he held on, clearing one port, then moving to the next. There were 6 ports in total. After clearing the third, he could no longer feel his hands at all. After the 5th, his vision was fading. The 6th port was jammed worse than the others. Jake's heating tool sputtered and died, its power cell drained. He had no other options. So he did something that would have made any alien observer question human sanity. He removed his glove and used his bare hand to chip at the ice. The pain was instant and absolute. His hand began to freeze within seconds, but his body heat, the warmth of his blood, melted the ice faster than any tool. He scraped and dug, his fingers turning black until the port was clear. Then he stumbled back toward the airlock, his vision darkening, his body failing. He did not remember reaching the airlock. He did not remember Rolk pulling him inside. He woke up hours later in the medical pod, his right hand wrapped in regeneration gel. Kessa was standing over him, her energy form pulsing in what he had learned was her version of agitation. "That was the stupidest action I have witnessed in my entire life," she said. "Did it work?" Jake asked weakly. "Yes," Kessa admitted. "The ports are clear, the station is stable, and you have lost 2 fingers on your right hand. They cannot be regenerated. You will be disabled for the rest of your life." Jake looked at his bandaged hand. He flexed what remained, feeling only 3 fingers respond. "Small price," he said. "For what?" Kessa demanded. "For completing a trial? For proving something?" "For keeping my team alive," Jake said. "That is what matters." Rolk spoke from the corner. "Humans are insane, but they are brave insane. I have never seen anything like you, Jake Chen." The final 2 days of the trial passed quietly. Jake recovered slowly, adapting to his new reality of having only 8 fingers. His teammates treated him differently now, not as a burden, but as an equal. They shared their rations with him, helped him with tasks that required 2 hands, and included him in all decisions. When the extraction ship arrived on the 10th day, the team left Glacier 4 together. Jake was the last to board, turning to look at the frozen world that had nearly killed him multiple times. He had survived. They had all survived. And in the process, something important had happened. The Thermian and Morvian had learned that humans, for all their physical weaknesses, possessed something extraordinary. The willingness to sacrifice themselves for others, the refusal to give up no matter the odds, and the ability to adapt to circumstances that should destroy them. The flight back to Sunspire Academy took 6 hours. Jake slept most of the way, his body finally allowed to rest. When they docked with the station, Headmaster Xyloth was waiting for them personally, which was unusual. The Zethian leader looked them over, her 4 eyes sharp and analytical. "Team 17, she said, your performance was adequate. You completed all objectives and maintained station integrity. However, I must note that human Jake Chen sustained permanent injury. This suggests poor planning and unnecessary risk-taking." Jake straightened despite his exhaustion. "With respect, Headmaster, the risk was necessary. My team would have failed otherwise." Xyloth's eyes focused on him. "Explain." "Thermians cannot clear ice efficiently. Morvians are too large for delicate work. Humans are not built for extreme cold, but we can endure it long enough to do what needs to be done. I used my abilities. That is what the trial demanded." The headmaster was silent for a long moment. Then she gestured with one of her 4 arms. "Come with me, human Jake Chen. The rest of you are dismissed." Jake followed Xyloth through the academy's corridors, his heart pounding. Was he being expelled? Had he failed despite surviving? They entered the headmaster's office, a circular room with windows looking out at the 3 suns and the gas giant below. "Sit," Xyloth commanded. Jake sat, his injured hand resting in his lap. The headmaster paced, her multiple arms moving in complex patterns as she thought. "I have been teaching at Sunspire Academy for 47 cycles. I have trained warriors, diplomats, scientists, and engineers. I have seen students from the galaxy's strongest species and the galaxy's smartest species. Do you know what I have learned?" "No, Headmaster," Jake said. "I have learned that specialization is both a strength and a weakness. A Thermian will never freeze. A Morvian will never be crushed by cold. But they also cannot adapt beyond their nature. They are what they are." She stopped pacing and looked directly at Jake. "Humans are different. You are weak in every environment. You have no natural armor, no extreme temperature tolerance, no enhanced strength. By all logic, your species should have died out long ago." "But we did not," Jake said quietly. "No," Xyloth agreed, "because humans have something more valuable than any single adaptation. You have the ability to adapt to any environment. You have the willingness to sacrifice for others. And you have a stubbornness that borders on insanity. These traits make humans uniquely dangerous and uniquely valuable." She tapped a control on her desk, and a hologram appeared showing footage from Glacier 4. Jake saw himself jumping into the freezing water, saw himself clearing the ventilation ports with his bare hand. He looked away, uncomfortable watching his own near-death experiences. "This footage has been transmitted to every student in the academy," Xyloth said. "Do you know why?" Jake shook his head. "Because they need to understand what it means to use your abilities or lose your place. You used every ability you had, Jake Chen. Your physical endurance, your problem-solving, your willingness to sacrifice. You held nothing back. That is what Sunspire Academy demands. That is what the galaxy needs from its leaders." She paused. "You passed the trial, but more than that, you have shown your teammates and the entire academy what humans can contribute. You have earned your place here." Jake felt relief wash over him. "Thank you, Headmaster. Do not thank me. Thank your ancestors who survived ice ages and droughts and predators to pass their stubbornness down to you. Thank your genetics that let you adapt. Thank your culture that teaches sacrifice. Xyloth returned to her desk. Now go, get your hand properly treated, and prepare yourself. The next trial will be even harder. Jake left the office, exhausted but satisfied. He made his way back to his quarters where Vrex was waiting. The Kaltorian's antennae quivered with excitement. You are famous, Jake Chen. Everyone is talking about Team 17. They are saying the human is crazy. They are probably right, Jake said, collapsing onto his bunk. His injured hand throbbed despite the pain medication. Maybe crazy, Vrex clicked, but also impressive. I did not think you would survive the first day. Now I think you might survive anything. Jake closed his eyes, his body finally relaxing. I am just doing what humans do. We adapt, we endure, we do not quit. Over the following weeks, Jake's reputation spread throughout Sunspire Academy. Students who had previously ignored the human now watched him with interest. Some approached him to ask questions about human physiology and psychology. Others challenged him, wanting to test whether the footage from Glacier 4 was a fluke or representative of human capabilities. Jake met every challenge the same way, with determination and adaptability. When a Corvan warrior challenged him to a strength contest, Jake lost, but impressed everyone by lasting far longer than expected through technique and leverage. When a Bellan scholar challenged him to a memory test, Jake used mnemonic devices and patterns that his alien classmates did not understand. Humans might not have the best memory in the galaxy, but they had developed tools and tricks to compensate. Kessa and Roke became something like friends. The three of them often studied together, and Jake learned about Thermian energy dynamics and Morvian social structures while teaching them about human history and biology. Kessa was particularly fascinated by human evolution. Your species evolved in one location but spread across your entire planet, she said one evening as they reviewed stellar navigation. You adapted to jungles, deserts, frozen tundras, mountains, islands. Most species evolve for one environment and remain there. Humans conquered them all. We are curious, Jake said, and stubborn. If something exists, we want to see it. If something is difficult, we want to overcome it. That is the human way. It is a dangerous way, Roke observed, but effective. I am beginning to understand why the Academy accepted humans despite your physical limitations. You bring something unique. Jake's injured hand healed as much as it would. The regeneration gel saved his thumb and most of his index finger, but his middle and ring fingers were gone, replaced with prosthetics that functioned adequately but lacked sensation. He learned to write and manipulate objects with his altered grip, another adaptation. When other students asked about his injury, he explained matter-of-factly that it was the price of keeping his team alive. Most aliens found this concept confusing, but a few understood and respected it. The second trial came 3 months after the first. This time, Team 17 was sent to a high-gravity world covered in dense jungle. The gravity was 3 times Earth standard, crushing for humans, but manageable for species with stronger skeletal structures. Jake spent the first day simply learning to move in the heavy gravity, his muscles screaming with every step. But he adapted. He learned to use the terrain, to let the jungle support him, to move efficiently rather than forcefully. When Kessa's containment suit was damaged by a falling branch and began leaking energy, Jake used plant sap and local materials to create a temporary seal, buying them time to reach shelter. When Roke became tangled in carnivorous vines that constricted tighter with struggle, Jake remembered human tactics for escaping constriction and talked the Morvian through relaxing and timing his movements to slip free. They passed the second trial, then the third on an acidic swamp world, then the fourth in the zero-gravity ruins of an ancient space station. Each time, Jake found ways to contribute despite his human limitations. Each time, he proved that adaptability and determination could overcome specialization. By the end of his first year at Sunspire Academy, Jake Chen was no longer seen as the weak human who barely survived. He was seen as the human who never quit, who always found a way, who would sacrifice himself for his team without hesitation. His classmates from dozens of species had learned an important lesson. Humans might not be the strongest or fastest or smartest species in the galaxy, but they were among the most dangerous because they refused to accept limitations. In the Academy's Great Hall, where the names of exceptional students were inscribed in crystalline panels, a new entry appeared at the year's end. Jake Chen, human, first of his species to complete the full trial cycle, demonstrated exceptional adaptability, self-sacrifice, and determination, lost 2 fingers in service to his team, and considered it a fair trade. Exemplifies the Academy's motto, use it or lose it. Jake stood before the inscription, his injured hand resting at his side, his remaining fingers unconsciously flexing. Behind him, hundreds of students from across the galaxy gathered for the year-end ceremony. Headmaster Xyloth took the central platform, her 4 arms raised for attention. "Another year concludes at Sunspire Academy," she announced. "You have all been tested. Some of you have failed and returned home. Those who remain have proven yourselves worthy. But I want to speak about one student in particular, because his journey exemplifies what this academy teaches." Jake felt every eye in the hall turn toward him, his face flushed, uncomfortable with the attention. Jake Chen came to us as the 7th human ever admitted to Sunspire. Humans are not exceptional in any single category. They are not the strongest, fastest, smartest, or most durable. By every standard measure, they should not succeed here. Xyloth paused, her eyes scanning the assembled students. But Jake Chen taught us that standard measures do not capture what makes a species truly formidable. Humans adapt. Humans endure. Humans sacrifice for others without hesitation. These traits have allowed them to dominate their homeworld despite being physically inferior to many of their planet's predators, and these traits make them exceptional here. The headmaster gestured, and the hologram system activated, showing footage from all of Jake's trials, the water rescue on Glacier 4, the ventilation port clearing with his bare hand, the improvised repair of Kessa's suit, the vine escape technique taught to Rolk, dozens of moments where Jake had found ways to succeed despite overwhelming disadvantages. "This is what Sunspire Academy seeks to teach," Xyloth continued. "Not the maximization of your existing strengths, though that is important, but the development of adaptability, creativity, and courage. Jake Chen possesses all 3. He used every ability he had, held nothing back, and lost parts of himself in the process. That is dedication. That is what leaders must be willing to give." The hall was silent. Jake could feel the weight of attention from species who could crush him with one limb, who could think faster than his neurons could fire, who could survive in environments that would kill him in seconds. But in that moment, they looked at him with something like respect. "The galaxy is vast," Xyloth said. "It contains wonders and terrors beyond counting. The species gathered here represent the finest your civilizations can offer. But remember always that capability comes in many forms. The human standing before you will never match a Morvian's strength, or a Bellan's intellect, or a Thermian's energy manipulation. But he will outlast you all through sheer determination. He will adapt to any challenge, and he will sacrifice himself for his team without a second thought. These are not weaknesses. These are the traits of a survivor, a leader, and a hero." The headmaster's 4 arms came together in the Zethian gesture of high respect. Slowly, across the hall, students began to mirror the gesture in their own species' ways. Roke raised his massive arms. Kessa brightened her energy form. Vrex clicked his mandibles in approval. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy acknowledged the human who had proven himself worthy. Jake stood alone before them all, his injured hand at his side, his heart pounding, his mind racing. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans watching these transmissions, about the weight of representing his entire species. He thought about his ancestors who had survived impossible odds, who had crossed ice and desert and ocean to spread across their world. He thought about the human trait that Headmaster Xylov had not mentioned, but that mattered most. Hope. Humans believed they could overcome anything. Sometimes that belief was foolish, sometimes it got them killed, but sometimes it let them achieve the impossible. "Thank you, Headmaster," Jake said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I am honored to represent humanity at Sunspire Academy, and I promise I will continue to use every ability I have to hold nothing back and to prove that humans deserve their place among the stars." The ceremony continued, but Jake barely heard it. His mind was already planning for the next trial, the next challenge, the next opportunity to prove human worth. Because that was what humans did. They looked at impossible odds and said, "I can do this." They looked at sacrifices and said, "It is worth it." They looked at the vast, dangerous galaxy and said, "This is where we belong." As the students filed out of the Great Hall, heading to celebrations or rest, Jake was approached by a being he had never seen before. It was tall and thin, with silver skin and no visible features except a single eye in the center of its face. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. "Human Jake Chen, I am Observer Kelnor of the Galactic Council. I have been watching your progress at Sunspire Academy." Jake straightened, suddenly wary. The Galactic Council governed interactions between species, maintained peace, and decided which civilizations were advanced enough for full membership. Humans were still on probationary status, allowed limited participation but not full rights. "I am honored, Observer," Jake said carefully. "Your species interests us," Kelnor said. "Humans have been in space for less than a century, yet you have spread across dozens of systems. You have adapted to alien environments with remarkable speed. You have integrated into galactic society despite significant disadvantages. The Council is impressed." "That is good to hear," Jake said, not sure where this was leading. "But we are also concerned," Kelnor continued. "Humans are aggressive. You war among yourselves. You consume resources at unsustainable rates. You expand without apparent limit. These traits worry many Council species. They see humans as a potential threat." Jake felt anger flash through him, but controlled it. "We are trying to change. We are learning from other species. That is why programs like Sunspire Academy matter. They teach us to work with aliens, to understand different perspectives." "Yes," Kelnor agreed. "And your performance here has been noted. You have demonstrated that humans can cooperate, can sacrifice for non-humans, can contribute to mixed teams. This is valuable data." The Observer paused, its single eye focusing intently on Jake. "The Council will be voting soon on humanity's status. Your species' future in the galactic community hangs in the balance. Your actions here matter, Jake Chen. You are being watched." With that, the Observer turned and glided away, leaving Jake standing alone in the emptying hall. The weight of those words settled on his shoulders like a physical burden. He was not just representing himself or Earth, but the entire future of human-alien relations. Every action, every choice, every trial could influence whether humanity was accepted or rejected by the galaxy. It should have been terrifying, and it was, a little, but mostly Jake felt determined, because this was what humans did best. They faced impossible odds and found ways to win. They adapted to any challenge. They refused to quit. And they proved themselves through actions, not words. Jake left the Great Hall and walked through the crystal corridors of Sunspire Academy, his injured hand swinging at his side, his mind already preparing for whatever came next. Behind him, carved in crystal, his name stood alongside the galaxy's best. Ahead of him lay more trials, more challenges, more opportunities to prove that humans belonged among the stars. The three suns of the Academy system set beyond the windows, painting the corridors in gold and orange and red. Jake watched them disappear below the horizon of the gas giant, then turned away. There was work to do, studying to complete, trials to prepare for. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, and full of species that could outmatch humans in every measurable way. But humans had something that measurements could not capture: the absolute refusal to accept failure, the willingness to sacrifice everything for success, and the adaptability to turn any weakness into a strength. Jake Chen carried those traits in his blood, in his culture, in his very human soul. And he would use them or lose them, exactly as Sunspire Academy demanded. The lights of the Academy blazed against the darkness of space, a beacon of learning and excellence visible across light years. Inside, thousands of students from hundreds of worlds studied and trained and prepared to lead their species into the future. And among them, one human walked with quiet confidence, his injured hand a reminder of the price of excellence, and his determination a promise that he would pay any price necessary. Because that was what humans did. They defied the odds, they adapted to any challenge, and they never, ever gave up. Sunspire Academy had tested Jake Chen and found him worthy. The galaxy would soon learn what that meant. Humanity, fuck yeah, indeed.